Being part of a mastermind has its innate benefits, one of which is gaining perspective from thought leaders in various industries. In today's episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook, we've done just that. We've put together a mastermind episode taking a handful of the best insights. This episode is jam-packed with valuable information you'll be able to apply immediately. Let's dive in.
How has AI redefined marketing strategies for both startups, small companies, and huge Fortune 500 companies? What's AI shifted in the marketplace?
AI, I think it is a most revolutionary technology. Just imagine what is happening nowadays, For example, when I was speaking at global event last year, when I asked 300 people how many people were using generative AI, only 5 people raised their hands. It is unacceptable what is happening, but I think more and more people show more interest in using and utilizing generative AI for marketing purposes. Just imagine the ChatGPT user base has grown to 400 million weekly users, and 92% of Fortune 500 companies leverage open AI's products. For example, Coca-Cola, Shopify, Snapchat, and PricewaterhouseCoopers use open AI's products, and ChatGPT 4, for example, can generate up to 25,000 words, which is remarkable. Nowadays, business owners use ChatGPT for summarizing content, 53%, email communication 40%, fixing coding errors, and website content writing 30%. It is 30%. Yes. And as I mentioned that ChatGPT is a most revolutionary technology. ChatGPT got 1 million users in 5 days, whereas it took Instagram 2.5 months, Spotify 5 months, Dropbox 7 months, YouTube 18 months, LinkedIn 2 years, and Netflix 3.5 years, So ChatGPT monthly 3.1 billion website visitors, and it is available in 156 countries. It is, and ChatGPT's mobile app surpassed 110 million downloads. So 32% of Americans are concerned about AI potentially eliminating certain jobs.
Let's talk about that. What's your suggestion? So our topic here is building personal brand.
Yes.
We know the power of AI. We know a lot of this data. So how should we, if we slow down a little bit and talk a little bit about how we can leverage AI without losing the human element? Because that's another problem, right? Now everybody's an expert and everybody could just prompt ChatGPT to write their articles, but they're not good. Most of these articles aren't good. So what do we do as personal people that care about a personal brand, that want to be like Musk, right? How do we utilize AI without losing our authenticity?
I think emotional intelligence is our advantage, and IQ is declining value because of technology. So emotional intelligence is our advantage. Building emotional connection is our sustainable competitive advantage in the age of AI. Whether I build a personal brand or they are Elon Musk and they build a trillion dollar company, because nowadays Tesla is an AI company plus Elon Musk's personal brand. It is total domination. But I think human content wins nowadays. It is human content. For example, a great example is my personal brand, because when I built my community on Twitter from 2014 to 2022, I have gone from 0 followers to 57,000 followers organically. So my cloud score, for example, was 58 in 2014. So it reached 80 in 2018 because I was consistent, because I was creating content. So consistent action creates consistent results. I think it's all about starting small, building gradually, thinking long term, to communicate your audience, build emotional connection. You know what Sam Altman, OpenAI CEO, said that 90 marketers will be replaced by generative AI by 95%. It is, and 5% is probably personal brand. So we need to care about this 5% to show our heart, to show our smile, and to show our personality, because the vast 90% of content that is put out nowadays, it has no personality.
So what you're saying is even if you're using AI, you have to balance that with your personality. You can't just develop boring, automated content and expect good coverage. Let me ask you a question. How do businesses strike the right balance between automation and AI and maintaining that human touch in marketing? I guess you mentioned it. It's giving your personality, but tell us more. What specifically does that mean? How do we give it that flavor?
The most common tasks performed with the help of ChatGPT, for example, writing code, 66%, copywriting, content creation, 58%. Then customer support 57%, then research 45%, and generate task list 45%. Just imagine that nowadays vast majority, 77% of marketers use ChatGPT in 2025, So as I mentioned that not using generative AI tools, for example, ChatGPT is a big mistake, More than 57% of entrepreneurs believe that ChatGPT will boost their traffic to their website, for example. And I think communication dictates everything that is going on in this world. It communication. If brands don't communicate with their consumers in real time, they will be left behind. Ultimately, market decides what is good and bad. So market decided that Spotify, Uber, Airbnb, and the rest of startups are good because they solved consumers' problems. They were agile, open-minded, So I'm a mentor at Techstars Detroit, powered by JP Morgan. The first tip that I share with my mentees is that they need to build their personal brands. They need to build communities. They need to bring consumers together. For example, the cosmetic brand Glossier, right?
Okay.
Yeah, so co-founder Emily Weiss built $1 billion cosmetic brand through blogging because she was treating blog readers as friends. She built community. Her marketing team was interviewing the biggest fans for their website. And if you check out Glossier's website, on the homepage, they show the biggest fans. That is how innovative brands care about their consumers, because you need to put your customers first, your biggest fans first, in order to become dominant, to be consumer-centric. So I started my whole journey as a side hustle, Avertis, in 2014. So I was tweeting from 7 p.m. to 2 a.m., I witnessed that they have gone from $0 to $10 billion, $20 billion because of they built their personal brands, because they communicate with their audience. They build trust. So I have earned trust. So my example is that human content wins. For example, nowadays when you Google digital marketing keynote speaker, my website, vladimirbotswadze.com, is ranked number 1 because I have never used ChatGPT for my own website, because the content that you read on my homepage, on a speaking page, is human 100%. Honest to God, I never used ChatGPT for my website, but that's why I built and trust. So when I earn someone's trust in magazines or at conferences, I'm also earning Google's trust. So it is very important to earn trust of your clients,
Vlad, for every Musk and the other people you mentioned, there's a million other people who don't seem to create enough of a following for it to matter. So I guess the question is, what suggestions do you have for them? Because yes, it's easy to use these huge examples of these trillion-dollar brands and these billion-dollar personalities, but behind that, there's a million different people that they don't realize what it takes to even get from 0 to 1. So what do you say to them? Like, what are the first 2 or 3 steps they need to do?
Feedback loop is important. Feedback loop. So Elon Musk directly communicates with Tesla's owners. When someone asks questions, he directly do you remember anybody from Ford Motor Company who their executives directly communicate and answer consumers' problems or questions? I don't remember anybody, because they continue to depend on backward-looking advertising. So advertising is going away. Ad consumption is down by 90%, and it's all about building direct communication with consumers. As I mentioned, that Spotify, Airbnb, Tesla, these open-minded entrepreneurs, co-founders directly communicate with consumers. It's all about being transparent, showing your product updates, and to improve product in real time. So there are 8.2 billion people in the world and 5.2 billion social media users. And the question nowadays is how do you stand out in this noisy digital marketplace? Because it is getting harder to rise above the noise, you know?
Yes, of course. And that's the problem. That's the biggest problem with marketing right now is there's so much noise. The world is AI has made it so easy for people to create content that the content isn't good anymore. That's the biggest problem, right? Before something got published, it had to be good. Right now, it doesn't have to be good. And there's a lot of crap out there. What do you say to that? I mean,
Yes, I'm a judge. Even I'm a judge for the Webby Awards, you know, and I judge like a top most influential podcast in the United States. So I can see from my first-hand experience what brands are creating nowadays in the United States, you know. I reach incredible heights from building my personal brand. How it is. I'm a mentor at Techstars, judge for the Webby Awards, mentor at UCLA Anderson Venture Accelerator. I mean, I have been ranked #1 in the world. So I can see that it's all about being transparent. It's all about capitalizing on social media channels to tell your story. So business is simple. It's all about supply, demand, attention, and storytelling, you know?
that I agree with. I tell people this once in a while, Vlad. Like when I did a program at Stanford, and I was so excited about all of these courses, and the class I was least excited about was storytelling. I was actually upset. I was frustrated, and I was thinking, what a waste of time and money. I mean, I'm spending all this money to go to Stanford to learn storytelling. I ended up getting the most out of the storytelling class, which was hilarious because the other classes were analytics and just stuff that was so about my business that I was very excited, and I left loving the storytelling concept. I mean, it was great because you're right. Nobody cares about data and information. It's the story that they care about. Vlad, let me ask you a question. So you know, you advise and mentor startups, UCLA and Techstars and so on and so forth. What's the most common mistake early stage startups make when approaching digital marketing? Like, what do you think that they're doing wrong?
It's all about how it is. I will be honest, and it's all about positioning your startup as a media company, you know?
Okay. Tell me more.
And you need to become the greatest publisher of information, because nowadays consumers expect to be entertained, to be informed, to be enlightened, and not to be bombarded by ads all the time, you know? So it's all about building brand in the long term. So you need to have long-term marathon thinking, you know? Long-term marathon thinking.
Yes.
So I was thinking long-term. I was creating content. I have shown patience. I reinvested my last dollar into my website, was showing gratitude to my followers every time they retweeted me, they liked my tweets, they left comments on my tweets. I was very interactive, so I built community. We were exploring the future of marketing together. So in community, it is a big difference between audience and community. In a community, people know each other. I brought my followers together. They made friendships that boosted my personal brand. But in audience, if I have a blog and if they read my blog post, they don't know each other. But in community on Twitter, as I have over 51,000 authentic followers, they do know each other. It is remarkable that nowadays my LinkedIn is one of the most competitive profiles in the world, like 65 global experiences, 41 LinkedIn recommendations, like more than 200 global awards, because I built my LinkedIn based on my Twitter performance, you know, because I earn trust. So LinkedIn is very competitive. Twitter X is more vice versa. It is like a cocktail party. So you need to mix. You need to mix with people. You need to bring them together. You need to be friendly. You need to help them. You need to be generous. So you need to give it. You need to give away your best advice for free. So this generosity has built my personal brand, you know?
Vlad, you mentioned something about good content. You're absolutely right? Like a lot of times the way that people think they're giving good content is they give you one piece of content and then there's a CTA and then they're on your ass to sell you the product or service if you, God forbid, you clicked on a link, right? I want to give a shout out to a really cool organization I don't use yet, but I plan on using. It's called CEO International. These guys are one of the very few companies in the world where they deliver good content to my mailbox. I actually read about 40-50% of their stuff. I have not joined them. I've never spoken to them. All they do is send great content, and then they have these amazing webinar type of stuff where they'll do cheese and wine day, and you get to drink bourbon or wine and eat cheese and connect with other folks. Brilliant. They sent me this beautiful gift box with my name on it, with valuable stuff, 2 books, tea, so on and so forth. Those are the people I remember. I'm never going to forget those guys. And if I ever need a coach, they're the first and only ones I will go to. Now, it might take them 3 years to get there, but just imagine the level of influence they're creating versus other folks who are just trying to sell, right? You can't disguise your sales technique for great content, because if you're providing great content, send great content and just think one day, hopefully, you will connect with these folks, but don't expect an immediate result. I think that's a big mistake too. Would you agree?
Yes, it is very important, Alberti, to provide value to your audience,
Yes.
So as you provide value, you start winning in the long term. So how you are supposed to provide value? So creating great content, because you position your brand as a media company, you provide value, you have one of the most sought after podcasts, you have great guests that builds your personal brand. You are going to put yourself in the best position to succeed in the long term. It is remarkable. It's remarkable. So I think content creation is everything nowadays, because there are 5 million podcasts, 70 million episodes, more than 100 million Americans listen to podcasts, So this market is evaluated is a ballpark of $23 billion, and podcast market will reach $100 billion by 2030. Just imagine that you are ahead of the game, my friend,
I'm glad to hear that. Seth, you talked about coming out with outcomes specifically for individuals, but there's 9 billion individuals in the world, or 8 point whatever billion. How's AI going to help have 8.5 billion people to solve their unique issues, right? Maybe they don't all have exactly the same issue. Maybe there's only 20 issues that 8.5 billion people share, but then you said that's the exact problem, because we're trying to take an approach and try to apply it to the masses. Like, how is it any different? How can we approach 8.5 billion people, I guess, in a unique solution? How's that possible?
That's a great question. I think this is where we have to change our mindset, right? The technologies, the frameworks, the mindset, everything has to be completely radically different to get to that level, right? It is hard to make a precision-centric medicine for that 8 billion of population, right? But the precision medicine is not about exactly as an individual. It's more of a precision towards your specific symptoms, right? It's a symptom-centric, right? So let us take a patient in a hospital taking a drug, right? I think most of the people have seen commercials, most of these drugs. At the end of there is a long disclaimer saying that it has side effects of cancer, this and that. Rather than your symptom, there are more side effects of the drug, right? So the precision medicine is not in terms of enabling crafted specific drug for you. It's very specific crafted to your symptom-centric based on your lifestyle, right? That means there are so many things needs to happen around you. What's your activity? What's your supplements you're taking? The book you mentioned earlier, right? Outlive. It's a best example, right? So I think the approach towards the medicine needs to be changed in a drug discovery, in a precision medicine mindset. It is possible, but we are not crafting one unique flavor for every patient, but we are crafting one unique in terms of the symptom centric, but in your own comfort level. That means some patient probably taking some other drugs. How do we change that, right? Some patient may have an allergy related to certain foods, right? Then your medicine can be crafted to those scenarios.
Got it. Which then would potentially prevent the 36 disclaimers towards the end of the commercial, because that's, I guess, what causes those issues, right?
The side effects, yes. So I think most of the people are in this new drug world, right? A lot of people don't believe these life sciences and drug companies, right? Because there is a scarcity. There's also a lot of fear, a lot of side effects. I don't know what happens. We're all trying. It's a hit or a miss. You're throwing a stone. If it hits, okay, this person is cured. If it's not, nobody knows, right?
But there's
And
also a lack of trust too, right? I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think people, the way that they look at medicine is doctors aren't here to cure us, right? It's their whole focus is on medication after the fact. That's again, that's medicine 2.0, right? It's like constantly trying to fix an issue when it's too late, like diabetes. How do you prevent? How do you? You can't cure diabetes, so what do? You have to prevent it. But no doctor has ever that I've been to has ever focused on preventing diabetes. And I've told them, I said, hey, my father had diabetes, so on and so forth. So it runs in our blood. And no one ever goes, well, let's slow down then. You're very healthy right now, but let's make sure that you stay that way. It's never that. It's no, you're fine. Let's move on. What do you mean, let's move on? I just told you have a, history of diabetes in our family, but they see someone that's healthy, but at 40 years old, being healthy doesn't mean you're going to be healthy at 50 and 60. So that's where I think the lack of trust is, because there's a lot of influence from drug companies, right? To not cure, but to keep kind of try to temporarily fix.
absolutely. I think that trust factor is because it's so expensive. Nobody believes in the health system what we created. Most of the countries, there's lack of trust and there are a lot of efficiency issues, right? There's so much of federal funding coming in terms of Medicare, right? Medi-Cal, so on. Each states have their own incentivized care, right? But the results, if you measure the amount of dollar we're spending and the results we're getting, they're not even close, right? So that's why in your case, the example you mentioned, right, in your dad's, in your family of diabetic, historical diabetic centric scenarios, that's why the biomarker innovations are so centric to this AI innovations. That's what we do at Good AI. We have a biomarker centric AI innovations. That means take an example of a type of a disease, a type of a marker, a biomarker associated to the disease, and we score likely a significant score related to the biomarker, right? So what we should be doing in the, let's say Health 3.0, whatever we call in the future is, we all can be scanned based on our blood sample, right? Then we score, okay, based on your family historical, your vitals, your environmental factors, where you live, your nutrition factors. These are your potential risk scoring for every disease, right? Sure. Then you say, okay, let's address only the most highest risk in that patient's journey, right? Immediately. Then the rest of all, put it as a roadmap. Okay, sure. Next 1 year, 2 year, these are the things you can avoid. These are the nutrition and supplements you should be taking to avoid that, right? So that's why that biomarker profile, we need to profile every person just with a simple blood sample or protein structure, right? A biomarker tracking.
So Seth, an example of that is like Life Force. I don't know if you and I talked about this, but I'm with the product called Life Force. It's good. The only challenge with it is a lot of it is subjective, right? How much do you sleep? How well do you sleep? How, things like this, and it comes up with scores and I mean, the blood samples are useful, but I don't know from the subjective components how good they were, right? That being said, let's talk a little bit about what exactly is precision medicine, because I know with Good AI, it's focused on accelerating drug discovery and precision medicine, but what exactly does that mean?
There are two factors in precision medicine. I think the first one is understanding that patient's key aspects of his current state of health, right? Mm-hmm. In the current state of health, what is your nutrition aspects in that health? What is the vitals, how your vitals are performing, right? What is your chemical structure balance in your body? Right? So that is the first part of the precision medicine, understanding the patient key, what's happening in the patient's inside the body. right? And the second part of the precision medicine is based on his body and how he's corresponding, how his living factors, his lifestyle, how he's enjoying his life, what's his health factor score, then identify key patient-centric remedies targeted to that specific patient, right? So specifically, let's take an example. I think a lot of people, let's take an example of a healthy person having a certain nutrition demand which the body expects, but that person is not giving that nutritional demand for the body expecting, right? So you just eat the way you want to eat, right? But your body, the way activity you're doing, the lifestyle, you're not able to sustain the nutritional demand which your body is expecting, right? What if a precision medicine is telling you exactly, okay, this is exactly your body required based on your current factors. This is what the nutrition you need to, this is your sleep should be, this is how your activity should be. And on top of that, okay, we may see one or two issues potentially as a risk factor in the next year or two. Let's address that. I think that's the real journey and the vision of the precision medicine.
Sure, makes sense. And what do you think is unique challenges AI faces in healthcare compared to other industries? Because AI is being, I guess, implemented across all kinds of different industries. Sometimes it's very simple stuff, right? Like,
Yeah.
I think AI has done a wonderful job in making people more efficient, right? But in healthcare, what are the specific challenges that are unique to the healthcare industry within AI?
I think I would say this mostly it's related to regulations, right? See, AI can do its own magic, right? But we still have to go through this regulatory cycles, compliance cycles. The data security, data privacy is a key aspect of that, right? Without compromising the data security and data privacy of that specific patient, how do we navigate through these innovation cycles with the oversight on the compliance and also regulation aspects of that? I think that's the key challenge. The models are just the models. I can just have a context-aware training or reinforcement learning. That's easy to do stuff, right? But how do we create this level of AI where you still respecting the patient's privacy, you still respecting the security of the data, you still respecting the compliance and the guidelines of the FDA guidelines and the HIPAA guidelines, and still you're innovating on top of that. I think that's the key challenge we face in a day in and day out. How do we transform this industry with still have these complexities and challenges you have to jump through, right?
Seth, so that we can make this more tangible for our listeners, can you share an example of a project or drug discovery that highlights the transformative potential of AI in healthcare specifically?
Yeah, I can say, let's take a cytokine release syndrome, right? We call it as a CRS. It is an immune response that occurs when the body releases large amounts of cytokines, right? It's a type of a signaling protein, right? So whenever a signaling protein into the bloodstream, these cytokines are released too quickly. These cytokines are usually produced in response to infections, inflammations, any kind of immune response, right? But in CRS, they are produced in excessive qualities. When they're produced in excessive qualities, leading to a harmful inflammatory response that can create so many other diseases, heart-centric, cardio-centric, oncology-centric, and the severe infections like sepsis or COVID-19 as an excessive immune response can lead to cytokine storms. Most of the people experience it during the COVID-19. So these are the some of the examples. What we're trying to do is for the CRS-related diseases, how about if we can predict the CRS score, the risk score of that patient, of that person, what is your CRS commonly associated with T cell therapy, cancer treatments. Most of the patients, when they take the cancer treatments, then they can have an excessive cytokines release. It can cause some other side effects. Antibody therapies. People who are taking antibody therapies can have a trigger excessive CRS. And also severe infections, which I mentioned, COVID or sepsis kind of scenarios. So I think the idea is for us to, our models predict the skin temperatures, right? What are the symptoms can detect early that this person is most likely as a CRS risk-related inflammations can happen very soon, right? So we monitor the fever, the chills, your skin temperature, and also any kind of nausea, fatigue, all these kind of things, right? So the AI, what we're trying to do is when we try to understand these kind of diseases based on the vital information of the skin temperature or body temperature or any kind of vital information, your heart rate, metabolic rate, right? All these kind of things when we track. So the models can predict, we have a thresholds for these specific symptoms. Anytime those thresholds are, let us take max threshold is, let us take 70, right? When we cross that 70, we can alert that patient in that healthcare system or the patient monitoring system with an alert or notification that a person is taking a certain drug, his CRS risk is going higher and higher, right? So the risk limitation, let us take 70. Anytime it crosses that risk, we notify that doctor, the patient who is actually under the care, a nurse or someone, hey, this person most likely getting into this risk zone, intervene, likely intervention.
Wow.
So that can be applicable in cancer, in tumors, right? We are monitoring with the computer vision the different tumors in the body and the cell level, right? If the tumor is, let us take, we noticed a certain indication of there is like a possibility or probability of a tumor. If that size is increasing beyond its thresholds, beyond its size, we likely tag that person, okay, this person is most probably be susceptible to this particular cancer.
And how are you getting that data? How is that in that situation? How do you know the tumor is getting larger or not?
I think most of this data is we have a lot of the scans. We have brain scans. We have any kind of X-rays. We track that, right? All these images are translated into a data-centric input. We have to translate with the metadata as part of coming into that part of the image. Then we translate that into a specific modalities and how these modalities vary and the variable parameters of these modalities based on what we would like to understand, what we'd like to track. And that's how we scale those models to identify, hey, this is most likely, this is a risk level from the least to the highest. That's how we predict.
And how is this different than what's already being done?
I think it's not like we have to innovate right from the ground up. We're already leveraging based on the healthcare system what we already have, right?
Yeah.
So I think the real differentiator is the speed, efficiency, and also optimizations of the resources. Most likely intervention, right? I think in this country, most of the people, there are a lot of people dying because of a certain interventions are not happen in the right time.
Yes.
Right?
Correct.
It's not about you have great hospitals, great doctors, that's not enough, right? How do we intervene in the moment, in the risk factor, right? So that we can mitigate that risk. Right, I think that's the real differentiator of AI
That's
in
the
healthcare,
value.
the life sciences. How do we
optimize?
Even
I've even heard about when someone takes that medication in a hospital could completely change the outcome. So if it's ideal for them to take it at 7 a.m., well, the nurses might not have time to give it at 7 a.m. because they do their, I don't know, their medicine runs at 9 or 10 a.m. So sorry, the patient has to wait 2-3 hours for something that had it been delivered at 7, it would have had a much better effect, right? So how do we influence that? That seems like a low-hanging fruit to me. Right? It's like give the people the medicine at the exactly right time. Why can't we do that? Right?
That's exactly the precision.
How can AI play a factor in that?
That's exactly the precision medicine of AI, right? How do we understand the disease dynamics? Refers to what patterns, what progressions, what influencing factors a disease within an individual and a population, right? And how do they emerge? How do they evolve? How do they spread? That is one side of things. But also, we call it as the real world data, right? RWD, we call it as a real world data and real world evidence, where as you giving care to this patient, there is a real time data you can feed into your models, right? Through your variables, through AI powered technologies or sensors, right? Then you can determine, okay, when is the right time to deliver that medicine? What is your most precise opportunity of that medicine to get into that body so that it can do its job, right? So that's exactly the precision medicine. Precision medicine is not about just to creating a medicine for that specific scenario, but also delivering the care precisely where it's needed, when it's needed, in that setting of the environment where the patient is getting the care. I think that's where the AI is a big game changer and a big innovator.
Do you consider some of these ethical challenges replicating biological intelligence in machines? Like, is this part of what you consider before you do something?
No, not really. I mean, it's such an early stage at this point. It's hard. I find it, although I believe there's ethical things that we should be concerned about with AI, it's like trying to decide how to do something before we figure out how to do it. And I find it very difficult. And I think what I've seen in writings, et cetera, that people are really struggling with that because they're trying to define something that's undefinable. I mean, if we don't know what trouble we're going to get into, it's pretty hard to define how to prevent that trouble. I raise these issues on emulation of animals only because, I mean, it's obvious. I mean, if you take a real live animal, if you're taking that same live animal and replicating it into a robot exactly as the nervous system works, you're going to, I mean, dogs bite.
Yeah.
You know, so you got to believe there's some mechanism in there in that nervous system that's going to tell that robot to try to bite. Now, of course, you could not give it teeth or not give it a mouth, things like that. So, I mean, it might look like it's more nuzzling you than it's actually when it's trying to bite you or something like that.
Well, I don't know, when we spoke, Tim, I don't know if you did any research, but I was in David Yang's house in Portola Valley.
I did look at that,
Yeah, really cool. So he had these two, I don't want to call them fully autonomous dogs because I don't know if that they were, but these dogs give tours and they walk around. They don't have a head.
Right.
It's by design. Right? But they sleep and they get up and they walk around, and it's actually pretty cool. They even had a doggy door.
No, that's definitely the right direction. Now, if we could take the dog's nervous system and apply that, you'd even, well, you may not get what you want. That, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because the dog might just run off.
based on what absolutely, based on what you saw in that video, how far have those dogs gotten?
Well, they didn't really show. They showed the dogs stationary.
Yeah.
Briefly, but they didn't really show the dogs in action.
Okay, so you wouldn't know. I thought maybe you might have done a little bit more research based on it. Got it. His whole, David, his whole angle is eventually we're going to be working along with robots as our colleagues.
Oh yeah.
We're not too far away from that, right?
Right.
And potentially your next admin assistant or person at the hotel can and may be a robot.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I agree.
Crazy.
Yeah.
How far are we from that, and what are, I guess, the barriers, whether they're technological, societal, or regulatory? How close are we to having that?
Well, I think with most technology, the societal aspects will happen after the fact.
Got it.
I mean, we invent computers and then we apply all these applications and get to AI, et cetera. I mean, these are things that we're struggling with. Um, I was watching a podcast a little earlier talking about how much time youth spends on their phones, and a lot of school systems now are banning phones, things like that. And they find the test scores increase tremendously when they do that, things like that. So, for all the good, there's always some bad.
Of course.
And unfortunately, I don't think we understand that. I mean, we've had smartphones for what, decade or a couple decades
Yeah.
now. So now we're getting around to the point saying, well, kids probably shouldn't be having these in their face all day while in school.
Sure.
And I think that's a lot of the technological challenges we'll find with robotics, general intelligence, and as we progress, these are the things we're going to discover that, well, maybe we don't want the robots overdoing this type of work.
Yeah. Well, most movies are specifically created around that fear, right? You have a
Right.
robot come in and they take over your house, they try to
Right.
become the mother or whatever it is. Um, Tim, it almost sounds like the approach used in these crazy technologies, next level technologies, is almost asking for forgiveness rather than permission, right? Meaning,
Oh, I
we
agree.
create these incredible things. We, independently launch them, do whatever we got to do, and then eventually, like you said, 20 years later, we're looking at phones, which were, by the way, designed for adults.
Mhm.
Right, I was 19 when I first got my cell phone. I'm sure you were a little bit older, but the point was they
In my
were
20s,
designed
yeah.
for adults to do business,
Yeah.
right? And it was
Yeah.
designed for business people,
And that's
whatever.
why I
And
bought
then,
it.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And then
Yeah.
eventually it became, well, should kids have it? Well, if they do, well, I do have to reach them. My daughter's in high school now. At the time, she was going to middle school. Now my son, we had to like force somehow keep him back until middle school. There was kids in kindergarten with cell phones.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That's scary. I mean, to me, that's scary, right? There's got to be a red line we have as, I guess, parents from preventing that, because the approach is just that. It's asking for forgiveness 20 years later. Ooh, we probably shouldn't have recommended it for kids, but it's too late.
Well, and there's reasons, right? I mean, there were reasons why I gave my children cell phones while they were in school. Now I believe at the time teachers weren't like, you're not going to use your cell phone while you're in class. And that apparently is coming back around, like I said now. But in case of emergency, or I needed to get a hold of them because I was going to be late, picking them up, or whatever the case may be, there was good reasons for them to have a means of immediate communication. And that's why we have cell phones. And of course, with issues we have with schools today, a lot of parents are pushing that only because they don't, if an active shooter comes on campus or something like that, they want to be able to make sure their children are safe and available.
Sure.
Unfortunately. So, there's good reasons from a parental point of view to want your children to have a cell phone in school. But and they're not preventing kids from bringing cell phones. And basically say, here, at the door is a basket, put your cell phone in the basket, and when you leave, you can get your cell phone back.
Tim, I have I think a wonderful use case. What the next robot should be the one that protects our kids.
That'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That's I would personally invest in something like that. So how do we create a situation where the next robot is just that, right? How far are we? What breakthroughs do you see in the next 5-10 years of AGI and autonomous systems that would allow for something like that? Because I could see, even if I put a security guard at a school, that's a human being.
Oh,
He
yeah.
or she is going to make a decision. Do I risk my life to save these kids, or do I run? Because I am a person myself, and I'm fearful, and I have kids, I have a wife, I got to get home to. That decision, that person can go either way. That person could be in the restroom. That person could be a slacker and not have shown up and not called in. There's so many factors that humans, I think, could be a problem that something like this would resolve. What are your
Well,
thoughts?
the Uvalde situation was that, right? I mean, they didn't know what the shooter was, and no one wanted to burst into the classroom and be totally exposed and be shot to death, right? So, I mean, unfortunately, they didn't. But at the same time, as from a human point of view or perspective, would you burst in and risk your life, knowing that you're probably going to be shot to death? I mean, it's a really tough situation, and in some ways, I can't blame people from being human and being scared. But I wish those kids didn't happen what happened to them. So, and they depended on the adults to fix the situation.
Humans are flawed.
Yeah. So, and that's why general intelligence is so important, because in the current AI, how do you train it to know that this person is a bad person? I mean, we know instinctively.
Maybe.
We see somebody strange. Well, that's true. I mean, we don't always know, but if somebody starts shooting, we kind of figure out, and a robot doesn't have to worry about getting hurt. Although pain is a part of the process of general intelligence. But, I mean, there's things you can do to tell a robot, don't worry about it.
You're a machine. We'll fix you back up.
Go in there anyway. Yeah, we'll fix you back up, right? So, I mean, a dog brain would be perfect for that. Things like that. And there's so many other things. I just read an article a couple days ago that I think it was the Chinese, have developing a cat robot specifically to explore asteroids and do asteroid mining. Now think about it. How would you create a robot using current AI to explore an asteroid?
It can't.
There's
it's never been.
There's no asteroid here. We can put it out in the desert on some rocks maybe and train it to some degree. But what happens if another rock comes by and strikes that rock? I mean, even a small pebble, might come in like a little tiny meteorite. How does the robot get trained to avoid those things? Whereas general intelligence would say, no, that's bad. I don't want to be anywhere near whatever's happening there, so I'm going to move away and go someplace else. Plus, it could totally go around that entire asteroid and break it up, do whatever it wanted to do to mine it without, any. We don't have to worry about it. We tell it, just go out there and do your thing.
We can't even. We
talked about this
humans
before.
To do that,
I always say,
we actually? We can. They don't always listen.
Yeah, true. And we talked about this before. I always do in my lectures. I say, why do we want to go to Mars? I mean, there's the psychological aspect of it that, it'd be so cool to have a human on Mars. But we can tell a human, go over there, check it out, and tell us if you find anything interesting. Right now, we have to tell a robot, go 20 centimeters, stop and take a picture and send it to us. Okay, what is that? All right, go another 20 centimeters and 6 minutes between transmissions. I mean, our rover's up there going a few kilometers. I think the last time I checked it was like 12 kilometers or something like that. Where a human could do that in a week rather than, how many years we've had.
Tim, what stops us from finding very relevant areas? For example, I think NASA selected a region of Armenia to choose it to be like a Mars mission, because they found that environment, that area specifically, to be very, very, very similar. So would that cat scenario play out in that way? Could it be trained?
Oh yeah, currently that's the only options we have, right? But if that cat robot had general intelligence, we could certainly put it in those scenarios and let it, roam freely and figure out what's interesting and what's not interesting. Have it give us feedback in that desert or whatever that situation is, and tell us what it discovered. Then we can tell it, well, that's cool, that works, or nah, that's standard rock. Don't worry about that, And we could do the same thing with humans. I mean, a human can go and see a rock and go, oh, this is awesome. And the geologists back at home say, we have thousands of those. We don't care about them. So I
Okay.
mean, it's the same kind of
Tim,
exchange.
I began to ask you, and then I gave you all kinds of follow-up questions. What breakthroughs do you foresee in the next 5 to 10 years for specifically AGI and autonomous systems?
Yeah, I think that is the next big breakthrough, definitely. I think, and the good thing about having a digital copy of nervous systems, the nervous systems that have explored the world, is that we can replicate them. So if you have a Android type robot or any type of robot in your home helping you out, whatever it encounters, discovers in your home, it can transfer that same data and information to other robots that are working in homes. So, for instance, if you tell it, okay, this is how you load the washing machine, our washing machines are different. There's front loaders, there's loaders from the top, but you don't have to take every individual robot and put it in every individual home to train it, which you would have to do today. Yeah, I mean you'd have to train the AI and the robot to this is how you load this type of washer. This is how you load, and these are the buttons you have to push on this type of wash. I mean, you just go down to a hardware store that sells appliances, and you'll see 50 different types. Currently, you'd have to train a robot on all 50 types. Now even current AI is transferable, but it's usually a one-time show. So if you're going to go into a front-loading washing machine, you're going to have to load that particular scenario into that robot's brain.
Right now, currently,
computer.
I can see the limitations because like the iRobot sweeper, I mean, it's nice, but it's not great, right? It just mostly just goes around and wastes a lot of time and goes and parks itself or forgets to park itself. And that's one of the most advanced, that's a pretty successful business somehow. Do you see any risks or unintended consequences of specifically AGI developments or developed through this approach?
Well, like I said, I mean, you have to have the ability to correct it.
Like the biting dog, for example.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, if you create any kind of robot, a vacuum cleaning robot, and it just goes and does the same thing all the time, that's not very useful, And again, they're actually pretty cool for what they can do, but they have limitations, obviously. And if you change your environment, I don't have one. The only reason I don't have one because I think they're really cool, but I see they're pretty useless in my mind. When I can do the same thing in 5 seconds,
They're terrific in
forever.
Very open areas with not a lot of furniture. We have a rec room and it runs around and it does a pretty good job, but yes, you'd have to run it back and clean one more time. And that brings us to the end of another great episode of the Tech Leaders Playbook. I want to thank you for joining us and hope you took away some valuable insights to apply in your professional journey. Don't forget to subscribe on your preferred podcast platform so you don't miss out on the next great conversation. I promise it'll be good. If you enjoyed today's episode, we'd appreciate if you could leave us a review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but it also helps others discover the podcast. Better leaders mean better working environments. Better working environments leads to happier people. Remember, a rising tide lifts all boats. I'm Avita Santablian, and this has been the Tech Leaders Playbook. Keep leading, keep learning, keep giving, and I'll see you on the next one. Until then, stay inspired, my friends.